Yo, it's our Strange Ideas podcast where we talk about atheism, where we actually learn that we believe in God and that it's all hatred and malice towards one being that we know is real and out there in the cosmos. Hell yeah, praise Jesus Christ. This is my boy Danny.
What up?
And this is me, I'm Chris. And last time we had our introductory, and now we're going to delve into our strange ideas because that's what we're fucking here for. We're here to fucking get into the nitty gritty about how disgusting and how depraved we are.
We gotta step out on our metaphorical diving board, jump a few times, maybe slip off, fall in the water, hit our head on the cement on the way down, you know? You gotta really get in there.
Yeah, dude. And you know, like, and since we're atheists, like, we deserve it. If we fall off the board, it's our fault. It's our fault because
karma.
we didn't hold on to the rod, you know? There's one iron rod and we fucking didn't hold on to that shit.
He's like, why do you think it's there?
Yeah.
Why do you think it's there? Because it just looks nice?
Well, and then we're like, well, why'd you put a sign that said, please hold them? It's like, what if the paint's wet? And we didn't want to mess up that paint job.
It's true. Like we need more signs is really what this podcast is about.
Dude. Exactly. But don't forget, we're not here to make the world a better place. We're here to destroy it because we're atheists. And that's just not that's just our strange ideas.
Alrighty, that's an episode. That's a wrap.
All right, but now on to a more serious note. We are going to describe how we find value or how we can find value in our lives or even just in ourselves in general. And if you want to take this advice, that's why we're making this episode is hopefully that you will. But if you don't, who cares? You do your life best. But yeah, I was just going to start off with a few questions. Just say, Danny boy, how do you find value in your life? And how do you even find value? If we're atheists, we have God. If we're atheists and we don't have God, like...
Yeah, this is probably one of the most important questions to address as soon as you start to find yourself in the atheistic perspective or agnostic area. Because suddenly it's like, oh, what does matter? And this is kind of something that hit me pretty fast, so I had to kind of dive into it because when I left my mission and I was all, I was thinking metaphorically all the time, or not metaphorically, but I was thinking philosophically all the time on my mission. And then when I actually found out deep down that I was atheist and kind of had to come to terms with that, I had to just think about it for a really long time. And what it essentially came down to is that the things you find valuable now, just because you thought God was making them valuable or something in the past, doesn't mean they're not valuable all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So the bonds you make down here, the people you help, or just the times that you're happy and enjoying stuff. One of the things I think I missed the most though was just actually learning to really care about yourself and stuff. It sounds cheesy, but it's actually just incredibly important to find value in yourself.
Yeah.
We talked about a little bit earlier, another time where we were saying, people think they need to get their value from somewhere. God needs to give them value.
Well, and people search for validation with others saying, oh man, if this person likes me, or if this person says that I'm great, then I'm great. And It doesn't come from yourself. It comes from that validation of other people giving it to you, which I know many people and then once you search for validation, I feel in those areas, it's not really fulfilling because you're just looking for the approval of others, which in a sense we all kind of do anyways because we're social beings. But yeah, go on, because I know that's a problem. I've done it. I've done it at one point.
Yeah, it kind of comes down to finding that intrinsic value for yourself and kind of laying down a roadwork of this is what I do that I find valuable. And this is when I care for myself, that's valuable too.
Yeah.
We always think of oh, am I a good person because how do I help others? And that is an important aspect, but people often forget to include the fact that they're helping themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And to go off on that note, exactly. People don't understand, and I didn't understand either, the time that you take away for yourself is productive, even if you don't think it is. Because you can, even a nap, the very concept of a nap is actually productive because you're benefiting your body by getting rest. It just doesn't seem productive, and you could feel lazy. Of course, there are times where it is a lazy thing to do when you shouldn't do it, when there's other things that need to be done. But if you're actually taking time for yourself, you don't have to view that in a negative way. And you don't have to view that as I'm not doing anything, I'm just sitting around. Even when it comes to things you enjoy, such as video games / etc, etc. It could be anything, even just internet searches. If you're doing it for yourself and you're actually getting something out of it, that is productive. And getting something out of it doesn't mean it has to be a physical getting something out of it. It can actually just be for your relaxation and your, like, because that's what meditation can do. Even though it just relaxes you. And yeah, I kind of went a little far and hard on that. But yeah, and I was just going to say, back to the validation thing, is whenever you're starting to seek validation from others, it usually shows that you might, well, I shouldn't say it usually shows, it might show that you have a weakness in your own self-esteem and self-image, which is a very hard obstacle to get through, especially if you think you're unattractive, if you think you have all these flaws, which at any moment can happen to us. Even if we're confident, we can eventually go down a slope where we're not confident with ourselves again, and vice versa, because our opinions on ourselves changes as we ebb and flow with like time and with our actions. And really, going back to the main question, how can we find value if God's not behind it? Well, the best part is that you get to make your own value. But how do we find it? That's by making mistakes and actually getting dirty, doing the Miss Frizzle thing on Magic School Bus.
Magic School
Bus. No, dude, that's the best part. Is the like that like completes it. But yeah, it's by making mistakes and actually trying new things. Because when you don't try new things and get new experiences, you're not going to learn what you like and what you're capable of. And a lot of times, you're going to find that what you're doing right now isn't what you want to do forever. Or what you're doing right now is something that you don't enjoy. And that is actually progressing. Because then you know that it's a state that you don't want to be in. And you can then work toward a state you do want to be in. And again, you can even change backwards. Like, you could actually end up wanting to go back to something because you might have not understood or appreciated where you were. And you can go backwards and be like, you know what, this was the place where I wanted to be at. Because we're always learning, we're always going back and forth, because that's just what humanity is. We're just gathering experiences for our ego, and eventually we become something. And man, I keep going off.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to like try to stay on target while we're on these,
Yeah,
but
dude.
like it's also good to kind of spin off a little bit.
This is art, yeah. So, just as we're talking about learning experiences, this is our learning experience, motherfucker.
That's right.
We're learning too.
But yeah, so I kind of just take it down to like the foundation of our argument is essentially just that we shouldn't think that like we have to get our value from somewhere. Like, because I kind of think of God, like if you think of God as like a literal parent, like let's just comparatively put them up to your parents. If you go and do like amazing things, but your parents had like a goal for you to be like a doctor, right? And so maybe you're just out there, you're not making any money, but you're being an activist and you're making some real change. Maybe your parents will be disappointed in you, but does that ruin the value that you know you had?
And the obvious answer is no.
Right. And so like my question is, why is God different? Why is suddenly, just because they're like ultra powerful, why suddenly is it so different that you have to get your value from them? And I'm not saying like if maybe God is like this amazing person that's just incredible, and yeah, you want to please them, but you shouldn't base your entire life around pleasing that one person. Instead, you should do what you find valuable and then hope that kind of just aligns.
Yep. And exactly, like you just hope that it translates, because and the hard thing about finding value for yourself is you actually have to look into yourself and do things, as we already discussed. But yeah, just because someone tells you to do something and you can respect that person, that doesn't mean you have to follow it to a T. Because once you start following someone else's dream, which I would just insert God's dream, you might actually be losing a part of yourself that is really important. And we can talk more about basically why we wouldn't want to follow God's plan and things like that, but that's for another episode. We just really want to help people find their value and actually go out and try to achieve things with their own hands, because I think it's very beautiful that you can find your own value. It can be scary because it puts all the onus on you, and you have to actually do something. But what you can do with your own two hands is amazing. It's actually really cool. Just barely, I just learned how much me and Danny have saved money for our certain project, and I was astounded that we had this much money. Granted, most of it's his. But even still, considering the tools that we had, what we started with, and we haven't even reached a full year of what our plan was, and we've just reached an astounding number, and that's just with both of us working, what are they called? Almost manual labor jobs.
I would say
essentially,
that's pretty much in there.
I would say, yeah, caretaking, yeah, exactly, caretaking. And so we're not making bank or anything like. We're basically making less than 16, and so, in fact, you're making more than me. But yeah, and even still, we can find value and we can appreciate that because, from our perspective, when we can accomplish things on our own, we can take pride in that. What happens, though, with, I feel like a lot of Christians do, is they say, this isn't me. I'm not doing this. I'm just a tool that God's using. And when I look at it that way, I feel that they're taking away the value of their own work and efforts out of their own hands and just giving it to God, which I feel like that's not fair. If you accomplish something and you do something, it's okay to take some credit for it. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
In fact, if there was a God that I could deeply respect, he would have to want that.
Yeah, and like, he'd want to give you the credit.
Right, like if your dad told you, I want you to go do this thing, and then when you were done, he's like, you were just acting as my tool. Yeah. This was my, like, I did this. I achieved this. I'd be like, you're an asshole. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
And why should our standards be different for God?
It's literally like a coach being like, oh man, that play was my play, even though you made that play happen. Like, he called the play, you made that play happen, and then the coach takes all the credit, despite you executed it well.
Right.
And, and then the coach is like, yep, that's all me. I'm 100%, this QB doesn't matter, he's just a tool. And that cannot, if you ever see it that way, that is just an asshole, and you should disregard that person. And exactly, what a lot of people don't do is they don't apply the same morals or the same ideas that they put to people to God. And they just give God, like, a pass. They're just like, oh, God gets a pass. It's okay, God kills people, there's a pass, he's God. It's okay, God tells people that they can't live their lives how they want to. He gets a pass, he's God. But if you ever saw a parent do that, or if you ever saw a person do that, you'd be like, whoa, that person's a little controlling and manipulative. But with God, it's like, oh, it's fine. He's controlling, manipulative, but he gets a God pass. And that's where we where we like draw the line, basically saying that even if he was real, he's not someone that we would ever want to find value from because we find him controlling, manipulative, and he wants to take the credit from you and just give it to himself. Even if you create something, if your creation does something on its own, you should respect that and actually give it the praise it deserves and not try to take away any credit or anything from it, because that's just what, like, healthy human beings do.
Right. And then, like, the argument essentially I have for those who still definitely believe and, like, but kind of can agree with the idea that, like, God shouldn't control us, like, then, like, if God is so perfect, like, just, it's okay to just assume that he's okay with you living your life based on how you would want to live it. And so instead of, like, laying out a foundation of value through God, I would encourage everybody to just sit down and take some time to think about, what do I find valuable and how can I live a life that would make me value myself?
Yeah. Yeah, what's crazy is, man, I remember when I was doing my value evaluation, essentially, just like within my head, it wasn't like a set time where I was like, I'm going to evaluate what I find valuable and I'm going to find the meaning of the universe in the same day. It was easy done.
Here we go.
But yeah, it was essentially, I used to value money a ton, and I was always afraid I'd be poor, which I am, but I'd always be afraid that that's how I was going to end up and people were going to look at me that way, going back to the validation thing. But eventually, I learned that money is less valuable than my relationships, 100%. And I've had people come up to me, well, I shouldn't say people, I'd say my friends, especially like my best friend, and he goes, thank you so much for doing this for me. And he goes, I'll pay you back. And I say, there's no need to pay me back, because I would rather see you be successful and that you live out your dream just as like I want to live out my dream, because that's more important to me than the amount of money I gave you. And I, like, if he does want to pay me back, then that's his prerogative, and he can do that, and I'll accept the money. But if he doesn't, the fact is that I don't care, because I evaluated what I find value in, and it's not monetary. It's not monetary.
Right.
It's literally the relationship, and it's made my life so much better than just grueling over how much money I might have lost, which of course sometimes I felt it. Like, I'm just like, oh man, I'm like, I could really do something with that right now. But then I realized, I'm like, what did I learn? I learned that the relationship was more important, and that since I still have a great relationship with them, it's great. And even if the relationship did fall off, I would not regret what I did, because at the moment I cared and I wanted them to live a better life. And just like God, if someone was within my good graces and I was helping them, and then once they became out of my good graces, unlike God, who will just punish them, I will just be like, you know what? It's okay. I'm so glad I helped you out, and I hope you find your peace.
Right.
And it's a whole different mindset. It's a much more relaxed and a lot more appreciative.
Right. And like, we could falter and like get mad, but the
yeah.
difference is like, we have that ability. Whereas like, if we're claiming God is perfect, we should hold him to that standard, or accept that either he's not there,
X, he's not,
or he's not perfect.
Yeah.
Which, based on like, if you read the Christian Bible, there are plenty of points where I can point out this is not perfect.
Oh, exactly.
Right. And so like,
even just in the Book of Mormon, because
right.
again, we were born and raised in the Mormon Church. Whoop whoop.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, so it's just like, you can just kind of apply that and then realize, like, maybe I should think about things on I don't know, I got a little bit sidetracked. Maybe I should just take a second to tie it back to what we were talking about before. Essentially, we've talked a lot theoretically about how we can find value without gods, so now I'd like to kind of talk directing it. Do you see that freeze? That was weird on the recording.
Oh.
I'll cut it out if it doesn't work. But
Sounds great.
so it's like, for me, my like me and my friend came up with like a belief system for how you find value, and it's literally just called the relentless pursuit of pleasure.
That's right.
And most people hear that and be like, God, like, that guy's an idiot. He's gonna
Well, I know. Well, when most
throw
people
his
just
life
see
away.
pleasure, they literally just think of the carnal, like, sex / drugs. That's like, when pleasure comes into the mix, that's what people see. They see like the most extreme version of pleasure.
Right. They just think sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yep. Exactly.
But like, you can think of like, the literal definition of pleasure is pretty much like a feeling of happiness.
It's just a state of happiness. I
Right.
think. Well, no, I think happiness is a state of pleasure.
Yeah,
and pleasure is just
something
the
like
feeling
that.
of happiness. It's something close.
Yeah, so essentially it's like, you could replace it, be like the relentless pursuit of happiness. But
Yeah.
I use pleasure to like
Enunciate
show
the
that
point.
Yeah, to show the point. And just because you're relentlessly pursuing pleasure doesn't mean you have to do it like an idiot. That doesn't mean blow all your money to go have fun for like 2 days. No, you can be smart and calculate out like, okay, what do I need to do to make this sustainable?
Yeah. Well, life is a game, and we're basically you're metagaming, and you're doing the min-maxing of, hey, I could spend this money right now and have some pleasure right now, but I'm going to actually suffer because I'm not going to be able to afford rent. I'm not going to be able to afford these basic needs. And if I can't afford these basic needs, then I'm actually going to suffer and not feel as much pleasure as I could if I saved the money. And that's basically what you mean, right? Is the min-maxing, essentially pursuing the most amount of pleasure you can get, almost in a utilitarian kind of way, but it's focused on your individual sense.
Right. Yeah, I actually love that analogy, because taking the time to find out like the metagame is actually incredibly important to figure out like, hey, if I invest so and so right now, what am I going to get out of it?
Right.
But if I keep investing, what am I missing out on right now? And so you have to constantly make those like
Decisions.
And yeah, because they can be incredibly important. You don't want to fall into the mistake of always investing in the future and throwing away your youth, but you also don't want to blow your youth away and set it up so you have a pretty like unstable future.
Yeah. And I basically agree. My view is hedonistic as well. I believe in the pursuit of pleasure. Also with an offset of because I find intelligence pleasurable, and a lot of people wouldn't include that with pleasure. But yeah, I think getting smarter and actually gaining intelligence is very pleasurable, because you can actively see it in your life. And whether that's through education / learning experiences, that's kind of where I more head into of like trying to find truth. And because I find truth pleasurable, but I completely love the idea because it is a relentless pursuit. And I'm just trying to basically live my life to the max. And sure, am I going to get it wrong? Like sometimes, of course. Sometimes I'm going to actually suffer. And I'm like, wow, I made the wrong decision. But that's part of the learning curve, and that's how you get into a metagame. You essentially learn the learning curve, you learn what's good, you learn what's not good, and everyone's results are going to be different based on your role. Some people are going to have a different role that they feel like they meet in their own life. That role can be intrinsically extroverted, introverted, all the personality types. That can be the role that you think you feel you fit better in. Because if we're honest about ourselves, individuals are a niche. And the niche is you. And you have to find your niche, find your value, find your metagame, and how you're going to win it and be successful at life. The unfortunate thing is that it's difficult. Because so many people are going to give you other ideas. And some of them are great. Some of them are bad. You can't do anything about it. But you have to find it by yourself. And to me, again, it goes back to how I find value is that having everything in my own hands is beautiful and valuable. Because I know whatever I create, I'm creating it. And that's how I find value in my life is that I'm actually doing it. I'm actively living it. And with my own creation, I want to be proud of it. And I feel like that's how I beat my things like depression and anxiety was like, you know what? I shouldn't say the word like so much. What I should do is what I want to do. And if I love it, then I'm going to keep doing it. And that value just never seems to end. I love it so much. I love having things in my own hand. I love having control of my life. And there are going to be instances where you might not. And that can be when you're in financial distress and let's just describe any other economic factor or even mental states. And that's okay because we're all going to get there. But the cool thing is that if you get out of it and if you actually work on it, you are still being productive and you should find value in your actions. But that's me. I love the intrinsic factor of value because I think when you create something on your own, you should appreciate it, and others don't have to appreciate it because they might not think it is beautiful. But I find it the most beautiful rather than someone creating a life for you and basically telling you it's beautiful or telling you how you should make something.
Yeah, and so I'd like to kind of take a second to tie this to like some other concerns people have that I know we have some thoughts on. So, like, people will argue that if there is no God, then there is no afterlife and stuff like that. So how do we find value in something that is going to end and be gone in what would some consider, like, relatively a blip to the size of the universe? And so I'll let you go ahead and take that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that was kind of what the last few minutes I was taking was kind of trying to describe, and I just didn't accurately describe it at the time. Because even though life is short, that does not take away the value or beauty of anything that you do. Like, let's just look at the example of a fish. The fish is beautiful. It's a pretty fish. And just because we know it's going to die, that does not take the value, its nutritional value away. It doesn't take away the value of the beauty of its scales. Or, I guess, skin, if some fish have skin. I think they mostly just have scales, but yeah, whatever. I'm not a marine biologist. But, yeah. Just because that thing's life's going to end, or even like a cat, like if you have a house pet, would just because you know that thing's going to die and it might not have an afterlife, would you stop caring for it? Would you stop loving it? Would you just stop thinking it had any value? And the obvious answer is no, because you care about this cat, you care about this dog, you care about this pet, you care about this fish. And that doesn't mean you have to care about everything. But you care about things, and you know that they have value, even if they might not have an afterlife.
Right.
And that includes other individuals. And now you just have to apply that to yourself. Okay, if I don't have an afterlife, if I don't have all these extra things that God can give me, if they're all not there, why am I unvaluable now? Why are my actions, why are my dreams, why is everything that I aspire to be, why is it unvaluable now? And again, the obvious answer is, of course it's not. It's still valuable. And how I would argue is its value has increased due by supply and demand, is that you do not have an infinite supply of life. So now the demand is a lot higher to do things, to actually have actions. And that demand makes it, because now the demand's way high because the supply is limited of life, of days that you have on this place. And since it's limited, your value has increased exponentially. And to me, that's a beautiful thing. It's very beautiful. But if you have anything to say on that, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was going to kind of take your fish analogy and just change it a little bit. Because, like, I kind of think of, like, you're looking at a sunset, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of this kind of applies to, like, meditation theories and, like, focusing your attention. But, like,
yeah,
we all look at a sunset and it's beautiful. And a part of the reason why it's beautiful is that, like,
it's going to go away.
It's going to leave.
Yeah.
And so you caught yourself at just the right time to enjoy this moment. And I feel like as a society in general, we get kind of really caught up in, like, the future to a point where it's detrimental. Like, where you're in a great moment, but all you can think about is how you might have to work tomorrow. And so you kind of fixate on that and you let it destroy the moment. And I would say that, and I think most people would agree, that ideally you would be able to focus your attention on the beauty of what is going on now. Like, I'm surrounded by friends and family. I should be able to have fun here and enjoy that without worrying about work. And of course that's idealistic and we may not always achieve that, but I think we could all agree that being able to be in the moment and enjoy good times is important. And so I would present that as the same argument for our lives may come to an end. Like, we shouldn't fixate on that and let that destroy the moment.
We'll go into fucking weeaboo shit with the Naruto. I actually don't like Naruto. I used to like it, though. But there's, like, this argument between a character called Sasori and a character between Deidara. And Deidara is on the side of art is an explosion, where it appears and it disappears because you're going to remember that moment forever. And Sasori's like, no, art is eternal. And again, this is all perspective and subjective, so you don't have to take either side. But I err on the side more of Deidara, because I think that when you see an explosion of beauty in that moment and it goes away, it's so much harder to forget than a beauty that's everlasting, which is like nature. Because nature's all around us and it's beautiful, but we sometimes don't appreciate it because we've always seen it and we always know it's there. Mm-hmm. But when you remember those moments in nature that were fleeting, such as seeing a crazy moment with a deer or something just beyond your comprehension, it can even be like a hummingbird. Because I remember seeing that back in the day when Mom had roses in her yard in Idaho. And I remember that vividly because it was so beautiful and it was gone and I never saw it again. And just going back to that, you can find that momental thing, even though it doesn't last, extremely valuable.
Right. And we've talked a little bit theoretically about, like, kind of like the perspective of, like, going to heaven forever.
Fucking nerds.
And like essentially just God himself and, like, how they can find value in an eternal life where everything goes on. And I think you have an interesting perspective on that, so that might be a good area to hit.
Yeah, dude, for sure. When we hit future episodes, I think we're pretty good stopping there. I was going to add something, but forgot it. So let's go with that outro.
Oh, yeah.
So, hey, guys, this is Our Strange Ideas Podcast. You can follow us at Our Strange Ideas Podcast.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, praise Jesus Christ. Fucking did it. Plugged it in. Did you see that plug in?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Shameless plug, bro.
Yeah, dude, shameless. But, yeah. And don't just take our ideas or our words for it, because these are just our strange ideas.